Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 37, Kindervelt Days.
Before we get into that, though, we do want to note that this week has been a bit challenging and our technology is not fully cooperating. This may be reflected in the audio on today's show. We appreciate your understanding.
Thanks, Bernadette. All right, as we normally like to kick off, here's the summary of the episode. Sylvia plans to turn the Fine family storage unit into a den for Morty, so Fran has to retrieve her childhood stuff. Going through boxes, Fran discovers her old win a date with Eric Estrada entry form that was supposed to have been mailed back in 1979. The Sheffield children take matters into their own hands and send it in, hoping to cure Fran's desperation to find a date for her camp's reunion on Saturday night after Maxwell declined to attend. Fran does not want to attend the reunion alone because she's convinced her rival, Judy Silverman, will be there with a gorgeous man in tow. Niles convinces Maxwell to take Fran to the reunion by comparing Maxwell's desire to top Andrew Lloyd Webber to Fran's desire to top Judy Silverman. Meanwhile, Eric Estrada arrives at the house and offers to chaperone Fran at her reunion as a publicity stunt. Fran is already dialing Val to tell her the news when Maxwell announces that he'll take Fran. Needless to say, he's a little surprised. On Saturday night, Fran's hair came out too big and her dress too small. Eric takes a few pictures with the reunited campers and leaves Fran before Fran even sees Judy Silverman. Judy introduces Fran and Val to her fiance, and Maxwell comes out of nowhere to save the day, explaining that he and Fran have been living together for over a year. Turns out Judy's not actually engaged, and Fran and Maxwell give the reunion quite a show. Their marvelous dancing and Fran's ripped dress. Yep. Finally, throughout the episode, CeCe is trying to quit smoking, and Niles is constantly whipping up a bunch of different tasty treats in the kitchen to tempt her, and it works. Bernadette, is there anything you want to add to that?
Nope.
All right, would you like to take us to scene one?
Yes, so in scene one, we are in a room that we soon discover is the Fine family storage room. At first, I don't know about you, Debbie, I thought it was kind of like an attic. That was the vibes it gave me, but they specifically just said storage room, and it was fairly large.
Right.
Even their like apartment of what we've seen of it seemed fairly large. But
right.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it definitely feels like an attic, but it had to be a storage unit, a storage room, because they have an apartment.
Yeah. And so Fran's there with Sylvia and the three kids, and the room is full of different stuff. And Fran's saying, oh, yeah, they could never get rid of my stuff. And then Sylvia holds up like one tiny thing, like, Fran, get your crap out of here.
Yeah.
So they start looking through it. And again, Sylvia explains the reason they're cleaning it out is because they're wanting to create a den. And given the current vibe of the room, Fran makes a remark of like, you want to put, Dad in here? Why don't you just put an iron mask on his face?
And strap him to the wall. Don't forget that part.
Yep. And then Sylvia's response is, oh, you kids, we're not into that.
Exactly.
So they're looking through different boxes, and Fran finds her stewardess outfit. I'll have a note about that later.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also find her old platform shoes that she used to boogie woogie with in the 70s. And she actually offers those to Maggie, who accepts them. And Sylvia, in the meantime, has found an old toupee, which is apparently, her husband's first toupee.
Yep.
She notes it was his first piece, and he loved Ringo.
Mm-hmm.
And then she turns around, puts it on Brighton's head. Brighton his eyes are very wide open, and Sylvia says, "Now sing, yeah, yeah, yeah." It's at that point Fran discovers the old form that Sylvia was supposed to mail in 1979 for the Win a Date with Eric Estrada.
Yep.
And Sylvia notes, oh, well, just put it with their tax form from 81. That needs to be out of here.
That needs to go.
Yeah, it needs to go. And then I believe it's Gracie's like, why are these people green? And it turns out it's an old photo from camp, Fran's camp, and she laments that it's gotten moldy. She prays that she wishes it was a fat year. And that's when she begins to talk about her old nemesis, Judy Silverman. Apparently, Judy was threatened by her. And I believe Maggie was like, what? Because you were like prettier than her? That. And also, I actually did threaten her, says Fran. And at one point, there was X-Lax involved.
Hey.
Brett, I believe it's Brighton finds a naked picture, but it's apparently a Burt Reynolds Cosmo centerfold. And Fran and Sylvia begin to argue over whose copy it is. And Fran's like, it's mine. You laminated yours. And she's like, no, it's not. And of course, it rips in two. And Fran makes a comment that is more than Lonnie got. Is there anything you'd like to add to that scene, Debbie?
No, I don't. So kitchen?
Yep.
Yeah. So now we're at the Sheffield home and we're in the kitchen and Val's there and Fran has these boxes, which clearly she took from the storage room. And she's like, oh, look, my old school books. And she starts flipping through them and there are a bunch of different novels. And then she comes across Intro to Chemistry. How did that get in there? And of course, Brighton's there and he's looking at one of the books and he asks, what exactly are a person's loins and how do you get them to quiver?
Mm-hmm.
Not exactly the question that plagues people in these situations, but okay. Fran takes the book from him, puts it in with the others and tells him to, put these in my closet. Better yet, put them under my bed. Mm-hmm. And we see some of the other things that Fran has rescued, if you will, from the storage unit, including this, as Maxwell later calls it, an eyesore, I think. Sorry, he calls it a hideous thing, but basically it's an eyesore. It's this, I don't know, let's say 5+ foot tall fake lemon tree. And
like obviously fake.
Obviously fake. And Niles comes in and Fran's like, saying to him, doesn't it smell real? And Niles is clearly like being sarcastic, like, you mean it's not? And she's like, no, but the secret is you dust it with lemon pledge. And then she tells him to take it to his room to cheer it up a bit. And so he like sort of reluctantly takes it, but he, as we'll see later, does not actually bring it to his room yet. And so Val brings up the fact that their summer camp is having a reunion on Saturday night. And, what are you going to wear? And Fran basically says that she's not going to go because she doesn't need Judy Silverman rubbing her handsome, successful, rich husband in my face. And Val's like, well, maybe she's still single. And Fran's like, no, Val, you're confusing her with us. Judy was narrowing down the groom side to 30 while we were still bobbing the lake screaming Marco Polo. And, Fran's like, she would only be willing to go if she could go on the arm of a drop dead gorgeous man and it wouldn't hurt, if he was loaded too. And of course, at this point, Maxwell has walked in and he's on the phone and he says he's basically refusing to model for GQ in Giorgio Armano suits. And what would I need with another Lamborghini? Is his response. And Val comes up with the obvious solution: ask Mr. Sheffield to take you. And Fran's like, where do you come up with this nonsense? And Val's like, well, it's just a favor and he's a friend and you would do for him. And Fran's like, you're right. I'm always schlepping to all those premieres. I'm in and out of limos. I have to remember all those names. And she rattles off a bunch of celebrities we'll talk about later. Meanwhile, we hear from Maggie upstairs, these shoes fit great. And Fran's like, gee, I wonder why I stopped wearing those shoes because I love them. And then we hear a very loud thudding sound. And then we hear from Maggie, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that answers why Fran stopped wearing them.
Exactly.
And we'll see more of that a little bit later. Would you like to add anything or take us right to the office?
I'll take us to the office. Maxwell is at his desk, and we see CeCe out on the terrace, and she's shivering, and she peeks her head in, like, "Can I come in? It's freezing out here." And Maxwell basically is like, "No, like, you have to go back to the terrace to smoke." He's not going to allow her to smoke in the house. Meanwhile, we see in the background down the terrace that Niles has brought the lemon tree
Correct.
to put on the terrace. And he comes in, and Maxwell says, "Niles, remove that hideous thing from the terrace." To which, of course, Niles goes out and tells CeCe, "Mr. Maxwell would like you off the terrace."
Right.
So CeCe comes in, and she's complaining about, like, "Why can't I just smoke in here?" And Maxwell's like, "Well, it's fine if you want to, like, do harm to yourself, but Niles is allergic." And Niles does kind of like a little ha-ha
Well,
thing.
it was more like a fake, like, coo, coo,
Yeah.
like, coo.
Yeah. And Fran comes in, and she, is like, "Oh, hi, Mr. Sheffield. What do you want?" But
Exactly.
it's not a mean kind of "what do you want?" It's kind of like a knowing,
Suspicious.
playful, like, well, yeah, but not mean. You know what I mean?
No, like he knows she wants something. He's not like out
Exactly.
to like he just wants to know what it is. Like basically don't play games with me.
Yeah, yeah. And she's like, "Oh, like, can't a friend come say hi to another friend? Hello, friend." And she sits down on the desk, and he notes, "You're sitting on John Malkovich." And she says, "I don't hear him complaining."
Right.
And he ends up getting up. She ends up getting up, and she starts out with, "So, um, what are you doing Friday night?" I don't know if she's already told him about the
Yes.
reunion or
So
not. She explained.
she
Yeah.
starts by saying my camp is having a big reunion this weekend. What are you doing Friday night?
Yep, and he, like, starts to flip through Friday night, flips through his calendar. "Oh, darn, we have a meeting, with the Tony committee. If it were any other day." "Well, good, because it's really Saturday." And, of course, Niles notes at that point, "A blind man in New Jersey saw that coming."
Right.
And, um, uh, Maxwell starts, "Well, I hate reunions." And apparently, uh Niles points out it's because back at his last reunion, everybody was kissing up to Jeremy Irons.
Yep.
And again, so Maxwell is not agreeing to this. Um, and uh, Meanwhile, I'm trying to think, is it because I have off to the drugstore?
Yeah. So Niles says basically points out that Maxwell didn't because Maxwell says he didn't go to his Eton reunion. Niles says that something like that's not true, but you were sulking in the corner because everyone was kissing Jeremy Irons. And then he starts listing things he needs to go get at the drugstore and skedaddles because
Yeah,
clearly
off
Maxwell
to
didn't
the
want to be
drugstore.
reminded.
Okay. And then Fran looks, it's like, "So what do you say?" And Maxwell responds with, "Goodbye." And Fran points out, "Well, you schlepped me off to Newport. Uh, and while you guys were out hanging out with Klaus, I was upstairs with Sunny." Um, so she's like trying to point out, like, she's helped him out before as well.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's funny because how she sounds, "I had to go up, I think it was like a yacht or something on a Sunday."
Yeah, exactly. As if Sunday is like her day of rest.
Yeah. And um, but again, Maxwell doesn't seem inclined to help Fran out. Do you want to
Yeah.
add anything?
No, I don't think so.
Then take us to the kitchen.
So Fran and Niles are in the kitchen, and Fran's basically explaining how desperate she is. Can you believe I actually considered asking my ex boyfriend Danny to take me to this reunion? How low can I stoop? And then she kind of looks up at Niles. What are you doing Saturday night? Which,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those, again, one of those timing things that the show does so well. And he responds, as cute a couple as we'd make, I have a date with a sure thing. And Fran advises him not to leave his wallet on the dresser. So then Gracie comes in and she thanks Fran for the psychopathic, I know, the psychopathic poster that she was able to hang up in her room. And Fran's like, that was psychedelic. Yeah, Niles, in the old days, you could hallucinate a date. And so she leaves, and Maxwell, of course, had come in the meantime. And Maxwell, I think, has the newspaper, and he says to Niles that Andrew Lloyd Webber's done it again. He just got the rights to a show I've been after for years. Just for once, I'd love to top him. And Niles says, basically, that's how Miss Fine feels about Judy Silverman. I'm sorry, sir. I know it hurts, but it's my job. Oh, all right. I suppose it would be thrilling for her to walk in with me. And so then he's trying to figure out like what he should wear. And he said, Niles points out that the blue suit's just back from the cleaner. Basically, like that would be a great thing to wear. And Maxwell's like, no, that's too, here I am, big Broadway producer. How about the green tweed? Oh, okay. Good choice, sir. And then Maxwell points out, oh, but there's no time to take it to the cleaners. So you'll have to press it yourself, fix the lining in the right sleeve and mend the buttons. Just snazz it up a bit. Oh, did you say the green tweed, sir? Don't you think it makes you look rather what? Tubby? Nice try. I'm wearing the green tweed. So obviously the thought is that, Niles just didn't want to alter / fix the green tweed, but we'll come back to that. Is there anything you want to add?
No.
All right.
I'll take you to the living room.
Excellent.
Where Fran is trying on the platforms that she had given to Maggie, and Maggie and Gracie are there, and she puts them on, and Maggie's like, I don't know how you can wear those without twisting your ankles. And Fran's like, you don't, like, you twist them. That's what the bell bottoms were for, was to hide the swelling.
Yep.
And she also finds her disco whistle and she blows it and starts dancing all around to Hot Stuff.
Yep.
Of course, she's kind of going all around the living room, and right when she gets to behind the couch, she falls over and the doorbell rings. And the kids start like going for it from all over.
Right.
I believe like Brighton comes like tearing down the stairs, maybe.
Yeah, and Gracie comes from, the first floor bathroom, like behind, like where we usually don't see. They race. Continue.
Yeah. And they open the door, and who would it be but Eric Estrada?
Exactly.
And she goes, oh, hi, Podge, and then realizes what she says and falls over the other side of the couch.
Yep.
Oh my. And so Eric Estrada immediately goes to help Fran, and like he picks her up pretty high, and that's where when she's like, oh my.
Yeah, and pretty easily too.
Yeah. And she, oh my goodness, there are several attempts at Spanish in this scene.
Yes.
And I never personally took Spanish, but her pronunciation is pretty bad because she literally says grassy ass.
Yes.
Just grassy. So she notes like, oh, they're like talking about his great smile, and she's like, don't look too close, it's like an eclipse.
Right.
And what we find out is that the kids sent in the form. And he is the hombre who is taking her to the reunion. And she says it's like a dream. Like, how did this happen? And Gracie, in like the perkiest way, says, like, she has a huge smile. We told him how desperate you were.
Right. Which is normally not something people want told, but.
Yeah, but no, Fran's so grateful. Thank you. And then she wonders, if maybe, he asks what the dress code is for the reunion.
Right.
And she's like, oh, whatever you wear is fine, but maybe the Chips uniform. Oh, no, you don't have to. But then as he leaves, she's attempting additional Spanish. I didn't get the final phrase because, she says adios. Asta, and I didn't get the last part. I don't know if she said it correctly,
She
but
did
then
not.
she said caliente, but I didn't catch the next word. But it was obviously something that made both Eric Estrada and his like manager like pause and kind of look before leaving.
Well,
Did you
so
catch
I
what
did
it was?
not. I did take Spanish, and I can tell you it was whatever she said was wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it even to me, it was like obviously wrong. I just don't know what she said.
so like normally like what someone would say is hasta la vista, like see you later,
Mhm,
basically, or until I see you, I think is the
mhm,
actual translation. Um, but she says hasta, and then it was some other combination of words that was inaccurate.
mhm. So, as soon as Eric Estrada and his manager are gone, Fran immediately flips out. I've got to call Val. And he goes to the chair, and she starts dialing the phone. And from the back of the room, we see Maxwell enter, and he starts talking about, how, uh,
Hold
you
on to
know,
your hat, Miss Fine. I've decided I'll escort you to your reunion, is what he
yes.
says.
But Fran's not listening. She's busy now on the phone with Val going, guess who's taking me to the reunion tomorrow? He's gorgeous, foreign, has a head of hair. I didn't get
You could lose your hand in.
okay. And of course, like Maxwell's kind of puffing up behind her because those descriptions could fit him.
Right.
And then she says to Val, it's Eric Estrada. And Maxwell goes, who?
Right.
Like he's very taken off guard. And then apparently Val is not really believing this because Fran has to assure her, no, this is not like the time I went on a date with J. Michael. Um,
Jan Michael Vincent.
okay, Vincent. And anyway, she hangs up the phone. She gets up, notices Mr. Sheffield, and then makes the comment to him, oh, you're wearing the green tweed jacket. He's like, yes. And she's like, oh, it's just makes you look a little tubby.
Right.
And then she rushes off up the stairs, still wearing the platform shoes. So she's like grabbing onto the railing, like
She's
as
holding
she's
it for dear life.
like rushing up the stairs.
Right.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Nope, I'm all good.
Okay, take us to the kitchen.
So CeCe and Niles are in the kitchen, and he is cut. Well, we start with just Niles in the kitchen, but CeCe comes in as he's cutting this chocolatey cake, and she asks basically what's it for, and he says it's for you. Congratulations on quitting smoking. And he puts this, and he's like getting it ready to hand to her, and she's like, oh, Niles, when you quit smoking, you have to be really careful not to gain weight. Oh, really? He says as he's dropping a big chunk of whipped cream on it and passing it to her. And so she's like eyeing the cake. Like you can tell she wants the cake, but she's eyeing. She explains, the last time I quit, I gained 25 pounds. And then Fran comes in and she's like, it's 6 hours till Eric Estrada. Like she's clearly excited. And Niall says something like, Mr. Sheffield wants to see you. And she's like, okay, that means I should take the back stairs. And as she's like trying to make her escape, Maxwell comes in and she's like, what have you got me low jacked? And so anyway, Maxwell explains, we have a problem. And Fran's like, why do you always go straight to me? Niles could have done it. And CeCe chimes in as she's like looking at the cake and eating the cake. By the way, Niles has also been making eclairs and a personal pizza and putting them all in front of CeCe. So she says Niles is no angel. But Maxwell explains, Brighton's English teacher faxed this over. The assignment was to write from personal experience. Read it. And so Fran reads, Isabel. How do I describe Isabel? She was part woman and part little girl. I felt her heaving bosom in my, whoa, like, why do you think this is my fault? The only Isabel I know is, if he's fantasizing about Weezy, this problem is bigger than both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Maxwell basically says, make sure Brighton rewrites it by Monday. And she's like, I don't want to do homework on the weekend. CeCe, of course, leaves the room saying she has to get back to work. and she has the pizza, the eclairs, the slice of cake, everything she's balancing has something in her mouth, and she walks out with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my notes end. Do you want to add anything?
Just that even though CeCe has already left the kitchen with all of those different dishes, Niles then chases after her with like what looks to be like some type of meat.
A roast of some kind.
Yeah. Yoo-hoo, Miss Babcock.
Tea time.
Yes. But yeah, so then we are back in the living room. CeCe, Niles, Maxwell, and Maggie are all watching the show that Eric Estrada was in, and they're commenting on it. And of course, Maxwell's like, taking some digs at it, and notes that, it's just the camera shot is just a close up of, Eric Estrada's butt as he's riding, I think, a motorcycle. And Maggie just kind of like sighs, like, oh, that's the way I would have directed it. Now, CeCe has she's doing this thing with her fingers where she's making noises with it. And Maxwell snaps. She's like, stop it, CeCe. Like, you've been doing this all week. Go smoke. And she was like, I'm wearing the patch right now. Like, if I were to light up now, I could have a heart attack. And of course, Niles immediately lights a lighter. CeCe kind of looks at him for a couple of seconds, then takes out the gum in her mouth and puts it in his little pocket.
Yeah, the pocket of his jacket.
Yeah, and then kind of pats it and then leaves. But in comes Fran with her mother, and obviously she's dressed up for this event, the reunion. But she notes, oh, my hair's too big, my dress is too small. And Sylvia's like, really? Like, I think you could have gotten another inch or two with the hair.
Right.
And
do you want to describe her dress and her hair, I guess?
So she's wearing a black dress. It's kind of the cut. How would you describe the cut? Because there's kind of like a halter element to it bit, but not quite.
It has like a high neck.
Yeah.
But it has no shoulders. But then it also has long sleeves.
Yes. And it's like there's I don't know if it's part of the dress or just the jewelry. I think it's part of the dress, but around her neck is like a silvery, like sparkly type of.
Right, which then is all, so it's like the high neck part of it is a silver whatever, like on her neck, and then it's matched on the cuffs of the sleeves. Mm-hmm. And shall we say it's tight fitting?
Yes, it's form fitting.
Very.
And, yes. And but anyway, Eric shows up at that point, and I think, do they say, I'm trying to remember if he actually came in a Harley. I think he came with a Harley, right?
He was driving a motorcycle, yeah.
Yeah. And Maxwell, of course, starts saying, well, I rode a motorcycle back at Eton, and Niles corrects him that it was a moped, sir. And it had a grocery basket on the
correct.
But Maxwell still maintains it handles well on the crew.
Right. I just want to chime in with Fran's hair. That usually we see her hair like half up, half down, but here all of her hair is down, but it has like at least 2 inches. It's like above her actual head. Yeah. Right. Like it's poofy. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to mention that before we forgot, because that's important in the next scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, in comes Eric Estrada, and Fran introduces him to Sylvia, and we quickly see where Fran got her Spanish skills.
Correct.
Because again, Sylvia also attempts some Spanish, including at the end saying "buenos nachos."
Correct, which even for people who do not speak Spanish, they understand is wrong. Buenas noches is what she was trying to say.
But then even Fran notices the slip up, because she, says this is my mother Sylvia of Frito-Lay.
Correct.
as in the chip company.
Yep. And now I want
And
nachos. So
yeah. And and then it's time for Maxwell and Eric to exchange greeting, like Fran's introducing him, and Maxwell's like, "Oh, well, I'm sure he knows who I am." And Eric's like, "No." What TV shows have you done? And Maxwell's like, "Oh, no, I do theater." And then Eric's like, "Well, how'd you get this house then?"
right, right. How'd you get the house? Like he's clearly confused. Like,
Yeah, like obviously you can't have that much money, or I don't know. Um, so so yeah, do you have anything else to add?
um, no, no, I think I'm good.
Want to
Um,
take us to the reunion then?
I would love to. So the first thing I'll point out is there's a big banner for the summer of 1974, just so we have a
Mhm.
sense of when they were actually campers. But anyway, Fran and Eric come in, and Fran makes a comment. Mosquitoes, they're not so bad. They taste like chicken, and she's like picking at her teeth. She still has the helmet from the motorcycle on her head. And as soon as Eric Estrada comes in, he's like mobbed by former campers who are so excited to meet him. And they're taking photos. And Fran goes over to talk to Val, and Val's like, "You look gorgeous. Take off the helmet." And Fran's like, "No." And Val makes the valid point that you can't wear a helmet all night. And Fran's like, "Why not?" Madonna wears 2 traffic cones strapped to her chest. And anyway, Fran ultimately relents, and her hair has totally deflated. Her hair
Yeah.
is now like as if she hadn't done anything to it to like make it poofy. And
Mhm.
Fran's like, "I gotta see, did I deflate?" And she opens her compact and she like puts it high so she thought like where her hair should have been. And then
Mhm.
she's like horrified that her hair is just totally deflated.
Mhm.
And it's at this point that Eric Estrada comes over to her and says, "Well, Fran, it seems like your friends got a big kick out of this, but I got to split. It was great meeting you." And Fran's like, "Wait, where are you going? Judy Silverman hasn't even shown up yet." And he explains that he's taking his wife and kids to see Beauty and the Beast. "Didn't they tell you?" And Fran's like, "I haven't met your wife and kids." And he's like, "I met my manager. This was all publicity after all." And she's like, "Yeah, of course. Well, it was nice meeting you. Thanks for coming and enjoy the show." And he walks away, and then she shouts, "I like the blonde guy better." And so she's like, "Okay, let's get out of here." Like before that stupid Judy Silver, like she's going to say before the stupid Judy Silverman shows up. But guess what? They walk into her just as she says, "Judy." And Judy's like, "Oh, so are you here alone?" And Fran's like, "Me alone? Yeah, right." And she's like, "Uh-huh. Wait right here. You gotta meet my fiance." Fran's like, "I won't budge." And immediately, as soon as Judy turns around, Fran and Val are like trying to get the hell out of there. Um,
Mhm.
and Judy says, "Now don't run off. I want to meet your guy too." And so Fran basically takes money out of her purse and says, "Val, here's a 20. Give it to the janitor and tell him to run a comb through his hair." "Too late. Here they come," Val points out. And so Judy introduces Fran to her fiance, Blake Glickman. And Judy is like, basically points out the obvious, "Where's your guy?" And Fran's like, "My guy, my guy." "You talking about my guy?" "Well, to tell you the truth, Judy." And as she's like, clearly like, she doesn't want to come clean, but before she has to, Maxwell shows up, wraps his arms around her, and says, "Hello, darling." And I just love it. Um, and then Judy's like, "You're her date?" And Max was like, "Well, I'm not really sure date is the right word. We've been living together for what, over a year now." And Fran
Mhm.
nervously is like, "Yeah, did you remember to turn the alarm on, honey? The mansion next to ours was robbed. It was so scary."
Mhm.
Well, Judy refuses to give up what she considers the upper hand and says, "This is my fiance, Blake Glickman. We're very much in love." And he kisses her right on cue. And Max was like, "Pleased to meet you, Maxwell Sheffield. How do you," and you know, Blake starts to shake his hand. "How do you do, Maxwell Sheffield? I was in one of your revivals." And then he starts singing 76 trombones. "That's where I met Kent." And
Yeah.
needless to say, that was not information that Judy Silverman wanted to share with Fran. And as she's pushing him off stage left, she says, "That's the last time I feed your cat while you're on the road." And, you know, Maxwell asks Fran to dance, and she wants to know, like, how did you know to come? Like, what basically what are you doing here? And he says, well, right after you left, the publicist for Eric Estrada called to confirm dinner reservations for after the show. And so I thought maybe you'd have some room left on your dance card. And she's just like so floored. And, in the course of the conversation, as they're dancing around, she says to him that, "Oh, Mr. Sheffield, I'll never forget that you did this for me." And he's like, "Well, I knew how much it meant to you." And
Mm-hmm.
he tells her that, "You look lovely tonight." And she's like, "Even with the hair?" And he's like, "Oh, I like it. I can actually see over your head."
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, as they're dancing, they realize that everyone's staring at them. And so Maxwell suggests, "What do you say we give them an eyeful?" And they do. They dance together and they're totally in sync. And then he dips her, and as he does so, we hear the fabric ripping on her dress, ending their night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The
And then they quickly try to scurry out, like her back up against him before
Right.
it. Yeah. The only thing I want to add is that as Judy is leaving with Blake, Val makes the comment, their kids will be good looking. I'm like, oh, Val, it's not obvious to you that
Correct.
he's gay and that he was just doing a favor for Judy. Like that was an
Correct.
act. And the other thing I just wanted to note with the dancing is like literally it's like sweeping her off her feet kind of dancing. Like
Mhm.
they're turning and like it's very romantic.
It is
Uh,
very romantic. Um,
mhm.
did you notice that um, when Maxwell asks her to dance, Val's like, basically like, "What about me?" And Fran's like, "I'll dance with you later, I
Yeah.
promise."
Yeah. She's like, Val, I'll dance with you later. Probably. Yeah. That made me laugh.
Yeah. Um, I just wanted to point that out. Uh, would you like to take us to, I think, the credit scene?
Yes, the credits scene, we're back in the kitchen, and it's obviously back whenever Fran originally brought the boxes from her parents' house, and she's going through them with Brighton and Val. And and Val mentions like how it's nice that her parents at least gave her a heads up before they wanted to convert the den. Like she got no notice from her parents. And Fran points out, well, you still live at home. And she's like, yeah. And I wish they'd give more notice, so I can get up from the pool table before they break the pool balls.
Right.
And and then there's some type of comment too. Well, at least you can still shower or something like
They added
that.
a wet bar so
Ah,
she could
yeah,
shower.
yeah, yep. So it's a very quick little scene between them. Is
Yeah.
there anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope. Uh,
Okay.
is there anything you want to talk about, like
Like
overall?
generally,
Yeah, generally before we jump into our shticks.
um, not particularly. Do you?
I don't think so. So
Okay.
shall we start with favorite fashion?
Yeah, sure. Um, so I kind of what sticks out to me, um, I mean, so I believe like Fran's dress that she wears to the reunion seems very 90s to me. I don't know if you got that vibe as well, Debbie.
I didn't think of it like that. I just, for me, I never thought about it how it's aged or not aged. I just don't particularly like it.
Mm-hmm. Because it just kind of made me think of some outfits I saw back then. Um, I think she still looks nice in it, despite how she says it's too small.
Well, we know why she said that. That sets up the ripping in
Yep,
the at the reunion.
exactly. Yep. Um,
It's just, to me, I don't I don't like it for me, and I also don't particularly like it for her. You're right, she looks great, but it just doesn't seem like what I think she would have worn to that. I think she would have worn something a little bit more colorful.
yeah, because it is black. Uh, and
Right.
it kind of whenever her hair deflates, it kind of reminded me of one of the earlier like episodes in season 1 where it's the play on the My Fair Lady
Mhm.
where she has her hair, like for that little gathering where she's using a different accent. She has her hair slicked down.
Right.
Like it kind of gave me similar vibes to that. So again, like you said, it didn't feel like Fran.
Right. Um, let me ask about what Maxwell wore. The blue suit is what he ultimately wears versus the
Not the green tweed.
no, yeah, exactly. Which did you prefer?
I honestly wasn't paying too much attention to his
Fair.
clothes during that scene because the interactions between them were just so romantic.
I mean, I just like to me, he looks like $1,000,000 in that scene. So
hmm Yeah, and I
probably
feel
because it's
like
so romantic,
if
but
since we saw the green tweed earlier, I think that made him look more like a professor, like than a night out.
mhm. It's more casual.
hmm
It's less impressive.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite outfit in this episode, Debbie?
I think my favorite outfit is what Fran wears when Eric Estrada shows up at the house the first time. She's
When she's
wearing,
wearing the platform
yeah, I
shoes?
mean, I don't care for the platform shoes, but she's wearing like a multicolored striped sweater and a jean skirt. And I kind of like that. Um, I definitely did not like the pink plastic suit she wears at,
At the beginning.
at the beginning. Yeah. Did you have
It
thoughts on that?
it looks very fake,
It looks
doesn't it?
uncomfortable.
Yeah. It looks kind of like a Barbie outfit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it does because it's pale pink.
hmm
Um,
Well,
but
in plastic, like very fake looking.
that's the part I can't get over. That it's plastic. I mean, in fairness, she does wear petroleum product outfits uh, throughout the series. And for those who've watched the series before, and what episode I'm referencing when I say petroleum products, you get a gold star, metaphorically speaking, obviously. Um, but anyway,
Yeah.
the other fashion thing I guess I wanted to talk about is what Maggie wears.
Can
Did you?
you refresh my memory?
So in the scene with Eric Estrada, when he
hmm
first comes to the house, she's wearing something that looks very similar to what Fran wears. She's wearing like a black turtleneck with black stockings or leggings or something under like a purple dress. And the purple dress,
Oh.
to me, that looks like a much more grown up outfit than what she wears the next time we see her, which is like a blue, like like mock turtleneck, I guess, with a blue floral pattern dress with some frills on it, like which looks
hmm
way more juvenile. So in this episode, it seems sort of like Maggie was bouncing back and forth.
hmm
So
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Any other fashion you wanted to talk about?
the last thing I'll say fashion wise is what CeCe was wearing in the kitchen when Niles was trying to fatten her up. She's wearing this blazer with vertical stripes that are like burgundy and red and orange, and I just do not like it. So
Mm-hmm.
even for like, I just didn't care for that. So
Yeah.
that was what I wanted to say.
Okay. Well, with notable New Yorkers, obviously, just off the bat, this episode's around Eric Estrada. Could you fill our listeners in with some background info on him?
Sure. Eric Estrada is an American actor and apparently police officer who is known for the leading role on Chips as California Highway Patrol Officer Punch. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
hmm And then in the first scene of this episode, Fran makes the comment about the iron mask on face. I'm assuming that's a reference to the movie Man in the Iron Mask.
Oh, I didn't make that assumption. For some reason, my mind automatically went to Iron Maidens and not the band, but the former torture device.
Yeah,
Um,
let me just double check because I feel like, oh, then maybe not. Because it's that didn't come out until 1998.
so
So it
then it's
predates
not that.
it. So it's not that. Interesting. I just assumed it was Man in the Iron Mask. So you're right. Sorry.
That's fine.
That's
Um,
where like Yeah. I'm trying to see though because I'm curious if because I know Leonardo DiCaprio was like the thing, but the thing is Jeremy Irons is in it,
Oh, that's just too
which is
perfect.
yes, which is why I thought surely this is a because John Malkovich is also in it.
You're kidding.
No, that's
So
why I was like, surely this is a reference to the Man in the Iron Mask.
so what you're saying is the nanny predicted the man in the iron mask. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Everyone's always going on about how the Simpsons have predicted all kinds of things, but look, the nanny is not getting enough credit.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Well, she also I want to make it oh well, I'll come back to this in 90s nostalgia. But was it Carol Black?
Karen Black.
Karen Black.
She's an
From
actress, singer, songwriter, and screenwriter who rose to prominence in the 1970s through independent films and portraying offbeat characters, including in Airport 75, which is the reference from Fran.
Okay. And then a reference to Ringo Starr from the Beatles and their song She Loves You because that's the yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you knew which song she was referencing.
Yeah.
Back to Airport 75, the actual title of that film was Airport 1975, and it was the first sequel to the 1970 film Airport. And to quote from our friends at Wikipedia, Airport 1975 was about, and I quote, dramatic events aboard an airborne Boeing 747 when a small aircraft crashes into the cockpit. Sounds delightful, doesn't it?
Yes. Now we also she mentions Burt Reynolds in a Cosmo centerfold, and he's an American actor. And Cosmo's a magazine, but I'm trying to see because then she mentions Lonnie, and I believe last episode she mentioned Alani as
She did.
well. So I'm assuming same, or is it different?
I would think it's the same. Could it be Lonnie Anderson?
I'm assuming so, but now I'm like doubting myself because
according to MobySpirit.com, there was a romance between Burt Reynolds and Lonnie Anderson, but it wasn't very long. It's apparently a love-hate relationship. And I quote, their divorce lasted over 3 times longer than their marriage, and they've gone from crazy in love to public insults to eventual peace. End quote.
Okay, so that makes sense.
So that must be the Lonnie that we couldn't figure out last week.
Yes. Yeah, there's when Fran's looking through the books from high school. I didn't catch the first title, but then she mentions Valley of the Dolls.
Right. So the first one was Looking for Mr. Goodbar, which was a 1975 novel by Judith Rosner, which, according to the New York Times, is, and I quote, a stunning psychological study of a woman's passive complicity in her own death, end quote, according to Wikipedia. Valley of the Dolls, which I believe we've heard reference to before, is a 1966 novel by Jacqueline Sussin about Anne Wiles, who moved to New York from Massachusetts. Okay. And it was very long, so I couldn't figure out how better to summarize it. Also from Wikipedia.
Yeah. Did you check, is Camp Kindervelt like a real place or just made
Yes.
up for
Yes, it's a real place. It is a
real... Okay.
We'll talk about that in Yoshiko.
Okay. They play the game Marco Polo
at
camp. And the name obviously is from the Italian adventure,
right.
but explorer. Giorgio Armani.
Yep.
The fashion brand. GQ fashion magazine. There's also the Lamborghini. Again, these are things I feel like our listeners know without much additional explanation. But then whenever Fran's talking about being schlepped around, she mentions Donald, Marla, Woody, and then I didn't catch the other names, but I'm assuming Donald Trump.
Yep.
Who's Marla?
Marla Maples.
Okay, and then Woody Allen?
Yep.
Because
Mia.
then I think they said Suni.
Yeah, first she said Mia, then Suni.
Mm-hmm. Mia Farrow, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Mia Farrow, American actress, activist, and former fashion model who's known for her work with UNICEF, her work as the UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. Woody Allen was her husband, a writer, actor, comedian, and film director. Soon-Yi was Mia Farrow's daughter, who adopted daughter, yes, who in 1997, so a couple years after this episode, married Woody Allen, her adoptive mother's former boyfriend. A little bit awkward there.
Yeah. When did you happen to see when Mia Farrow and Woody, were they already divorced by this episode or not yet?
I did not check that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do some quick searching. So they got divorced they separated in 1992. So they would have already been.
So right around that time. Okay.
About 2 years earlier. Yeah.
Okay. So that's like an awkward.
Yeah. That's putting it nicely. Yes. Awkward.
Yeah. Let's see here.
While you're looking, I want to mention from the first scene, Fran made a comment about how she used to boogie Oogie Oogie until she just couldn't boogie no more. That's a reference to the debut single by A Taste of Honey from 1978 titled Boogie Oogie Oogie. Let's see, who else can I mention? Lamborghini, you mentioned, I think. John Malkovich, an American actor who appeared in apparently over 70 films, including Of Mice and Men. You previously mentioned Jeremy Irons, who we've talked about previously. He's an English actor who, in this world, went to school with Maxwell and stole the role of Romeo from him in a previous episode, as you recall. Did you know who the reference to Klaus was?
No, I did not.
Okay, so this one I found particularly interesting. So Klaus was a Danish-British socialite, consultant, and lawyer who was convicted of the attempted murder of his wife, Sonny von Bulow, in 1982 following an insulin overdose. After an insulin overdose in 1980 left her in a persistent vegetative state. His convictions were ultimately reversed on appeal, and he was not convicted on a new trial. So that's the reference to, the yacht going up to Newport so the family can hang out with Klaus, while Fran was stuck with Sonny, who didn't say 2 words.
Oh my goodness. That's dark.
That's super dark, and maybe that was bigger news in the 90s, but also seems like a reference that I feel like would go over most people's heads.
Yeah. So thank you for looking that up.
You're welcome. One thing I could not find and understand, like a reference for, is that Fran's comment about twirl that chandelier after she got her disco whistle. I don't know what that was a reference to.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
If anyone's aware, please tweet at us or email us and let us know. She references the song Hot Stuff by Donna Summer and Kygo. Jan Michael Vincent was an American actor known for the role of Stringfellow Hawk in Airwolf and Matt Johnson in Big Wednesday. The reference to LoJack, according to LoJack's webpage, is the only stolen vehicle recovery system integrated with law enforcement. 76 Trombones, as sung by Blake Glickman, is one of the more memorable numbers from The Music Man. And then, of course, there's the song sung while Maxwell and Fran are dancing, Two Different Worlds, which has been done by a number of different singers. So
yeah, so there's also, we mentioned the reference to Weezy. Whenever she's talking about she only knows one Isabel.
Right.
Is that, I'm trying to look, is that Stanford and Sons?
Oh, I thought that was just a classmate.
Oh, no. It's a show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if it's that or somewhere else.
So according to our friends on Wikipedia, Isabel Sanford was an American stage, film, television actress and comedian best known for her role as Louise Weezy Mills Jefferson on the sitcom All in the Family and the Jeffersons.
And obviously, too, there's a reference to Andrew Lloyd Webber once again.
We will see and hear many more of them.
Yes. Let's see.
Beauty and the Beast.
Yes. And I would imagine it was fairly new around that time.
I would think so. Let's see. So yeah, actually, according to Wikipedia, Beauty and the Beast, the musical, well, the Broadway musical, was opened in 1994 on Broadway. Oh. So the timing is perfect there.
Yeah. I think
that's it.
We'll call it. That's it. That was a lot.
There were a lot in this episode.
Okay. Are we ready then to move on to Yoshiko?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to start with a very minor one. In the first scene in the storage room, in the background is the electric menorah that I think almost every Jewish person has had or seen in their lifetime. It has like little blue and then one orange, and the one they have light bulbs to light, so you can put it in your window, kind of like people put up a lot of lights for Christmas. That's the Jewish, counterpoint. Since most people probably didn't notice it, you can see it's way smaller. She uses the word schlep, which I feel like we've talked about before. It's you're going and it's a trek and it's a pain. So yeah, and then it's like drag, and then the last one is Kindervelt and Camp Kindervelt. So first off, Kindervelt means children's world, but according to Wikipedia, Camp Kindervelt was actually a real place. It was a Highland Mills, New York Jewish sleepaway camp that was run by a chapter of a Zionist mutual aid association. The camp itself was founded in the 1920s and it closed in 1971. So the timing is a little bit off. And according to the Wikipedia page, and I quote, an episode of the American TV sitcom The Nanny, Season 2, Episode 15, Kindervelt Days, found its heroine attending a Camp Kindervelt reunion party, reflecting the fact that some staffers of the show were former Kindervelt campers. End quote. So I like the fact that there was a shout out to The Nanny there. According to Wikipedia, there are a number of famous alumni from Camp Kindervelt, who I will not pretend to have heard of most of them, but some of them seem like pretty cool people. So for example, Leon Lederman, who won the 1988 Nobel Prize in Physics, he was there. Sidney Lumet, American director, producer, and screenwriter with over 50 films to his credit. Hannah Block, who was an American poet, translator, and scholar. Dan Schlossberg, a novelist and writer, who's written over 20 novels and over 10,000 articles about baseball. Abraham Foxman, a lawyer and activist who used to be the national director of the Anti-Defamation League. Just a bunch of really interesting, cool people who went there. Yes, my reading of the summaries was definitely my reading, not my making it up. So thanks, Wikipedia. We appreciate the information. So yeah, I think that's it. Was there any other Yiddish that I didn't register?
I don't think so, because again, I really like the schlepped came up so much in this episode.
It really did. It really did. Would you like to start us with 90s nostalgia then?
Yes. So I mentioned this a couple of times that I'd come back to it, but the term stewardess, that seems very outdated at this point because they're flight attendants.
That is a very good point.
Um, so it's interesting to the whole mailing in the form
Mm-hmm.
when a date with Eric Estrada, because these days it would probably be just an online like thing you would click and send.
Correct. You'd
Uh,
probably like follow someone on Instagram and
mhm.
that'd be that.
But I also feel like at least I don't hear much about these kind of publicity things where that's even a thing that happens anymore. Have you like heard recently of like a fan getting to go out with a celebrity?
I have
I don't
not.
know if it's just like in the dark or not, but I feel like that may have been more prevalent like back in the day.
I have not, but I also have not looked for it and I'm not super into celebrities. So except for
Mhm.
clearly Fran Drescher, since we're doing this show and all that. Um that's a good point. That does, as you say it, it does feel dated now.
Mhm. Do you want to hop in?
Old cars.
Yep, we did see. I As soon as I saw that kind of stock footage, I was like, yes, we can confirm there are old cars in this particular episode.
um I'll point out um the old phone that CeCe that Fran uses to call Val. Um I kind of wonder if CeCe's attempt to quit smoking is a little dated.
Well, just like that, she was even questioning about why she can't smoke inside.
Hmm.
I feel like nowadays it's even less like likely to smoke inside. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So New York City banned indoor smoking. Wow. According to New York nys.shrm.org, uh, the Clean Indoor Act was effective July 2003,
Hmm.
which I thought it would have been earlier than that. Um, but guess I'm wrong. Um, so yeah, I mean, less than a decade later, New York City banned smoking inside. So
Hmm.
and I feel like a lot of other jurisdictions followed suit. Like
Hmm.
I remember as a kid going out to eat, and one of the questions was, "Do you want to sit in the smoking or non-smoking
Yeah.
section?"
Hmm.
I feel like that doesn't happen anymore, assuming one goes into restaurants anymore. But different assumption.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I feel like CeCe trying to quit smoking is sort of dated. Um, yeah,
Everybody flocking for a photo with Eric Estrada at the thing. It'd be people whipping out their phones and taking like selfies and stuff like that.
yes, and actually, the photographer who was with him, the publicist guy,
Hmm.
like he had a really old-fashioned looking camera.
Hmm. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm
And
out unless you have
okay.
something.
So can you give us some future fun?
I would love to. Um, so we'll start minor. The reason I felt the need, oh, the low jack. I should mention that. That feels sort of 90s, although apparently it's still around. Um, I just want to point out in I think it's season 3, uh, on the episode Ship of Fran's, Fran and Val plan to go on a cruise because Fran's psychic told her that she's going to meet the man of her dreams on the cruise and dance on water. And so she's clearly looking for her husband, for her future husband, and Maxwell and the family tag along, and he hunts her down basically on a couple different occasions. At one point, she says something like, "There are 3,000 people on board. What do I have? Low jack stuffed in my bra? Like, basically, how do you keep finding me?"
Hmm.
Um, so this is not the only reunion that Fran is invited to or attends. In I think it's season 4, in the episode Your Foot's Too Big, she goes at Maxwell's, insistence. She goes to the reunion of her former like foot modeling buddies. Um, like Maxwell basically like insists she goes, like she's concerned because like her foot grew a size and she has all these nightmares that people are going to judge her about how ugly and horrible her feet are. But like and then she has this dream where Maxwell wakes her and says that, you're a beautiful woman and like you should go. And anyway, so they end up going. And afterwards, Maxwell comments to her something about like, did you know that all of your friends were under the impression that I was your husband? And she's like, I wonder where they got a crazy idea like that. And then I believe it's in season 5 where Fran attends her high school reunion with Val without Sam's partner, despite the fact that she's newly engaged. And her whole plan is she's going to show her flashy engagement ring to everyone and anyone who's there. But everyone who's there is too busy talking about their divorces. And so she doesn't get to like show off. And actually that's kind of funny because in that episode, there's a guest star by Ray Romano, who just started his series, Everybody Loves Raymond. And so, but anyway, the reason I'm bringing him up is because Fran brought a man's jacket and basically drapes it over the chair next to hers. And he like goes over to the jacket and says, "Hi, nice to see you again." So it's clearly something she's done at previous reunions. Let's see. So minor note, Fran later reads Gracie The Valley of the Dolls. So that's interesting. And then I guess the last thing I'll mention is the last episode in season 2 is titled Fran Gets Mugged. And it ends with the Sheffield home being burglarized. So like kind of with the comment of, oh, the mansion next door to ours was robbed. Well, sort of predicting what happens at the end of the season. So, yeah. Yeah. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm like tempted.
I couldn't tell. Is there more? Or
I have one other note, but like it's sort of a half-baked one. Like, Val wanting to dance with Fran. There is an episode titled Kissing Cousins. I think it's in season 3. It's the one where Jon Stewart guest stars as Bob. Fran's supposed to be a bridesmaid to one of her cousins, and she doesn't know who to bring, so she might bring Val, and she's talking as like her date. And she's like, her mom doesn't like this plan. She's like, "What, are you afraid that the family's going to think I'm gay?" And she's like, "No, I could care less about. It's more, I don't want them to think the best you could do is Val."
Oh, poor Val.
Poor Val. Yeah. We'll see more about how sad Val is.
But again, she at least puts together the things that Fran doesn't, because Fran, in this episode, Fran's like, someone who's handsome and loaded, and she's the one who makes the obvious observation. What about Mr. Sheffield?
No, that's a good point. I mean, this episode and I think the last one, Val put things together really well.
She just figured out how to share.
Yeah, I mean, but she usually doesn't. So I guess I'm just so used to her being the butt of jokes that it's hard for me to give her credit, even if credit's due. Sorry, Val. Sorry.
Okay, well, this week it's your turn to go first with the episode rating.
I know. I knew it was my turn. I knew. I should have thought more about how I wanted to rate the episode. It's an okay episode. It's not my favorite. It's not one that I will usually go out of my way to watch. I like, obviously, the dancing between Fran and Maxwell. I like how fixated they are on each other. I think that's great. But I don't really like the whole like, oh, let's go with Eric Estrada. I'm gonna give it a 3. So it's just not my favorite. It's not one I look forward to watching. So now it's your turn.
I might flip from what you did last week, and I might give it a 3.5.
I figured you were going to do that.
Because again, it was okay. Not something I think I would go out of my way to watch, but I think the dancing scene kind of helped boost it a bit from where it was. So
that's fair. I mean, I obviously have the foresight / background knowledge to know like some of the episodes that are coming up, and I'm like really excited about some of them. This one just is not even on that list.
And as, as a disclaimer for me, my scores are not done in a scientific manner.
Fair.
So they're subject to change. It's just what I'm currently feeling.
That's a very good disclaimer. Mine are also not done with any scientific precision. It's just kind of like a gut feeling as to whether, like, based on what we've seen recently, what we're going to see soon. And all my years of rewatching the show. And yeah, this is just not one that I
You have a lot more basis with which to make a ranking then, but a rating, but
yes and no. I mean, you're seeing this basically with fresh eyes. So like your ratings are probably more pristine, yours are definitely less colored by years and many rewatchings. So, and years of thoughts and resentments and or idolations. Again, it's because I'm thinking about like some of the episodes that we're going to watch in the next, few weeks or months. Like in that span, there is an episode that I absolutely hate, and yet then there are other episodes that I absolutely love. Like I'm just like thinking about the ones that are coming up, and there are a number that I will watch basically on repeat because I like them so much. So yeah. Do you have
anything else you wanted? After you go, do you have anything else you wanted to say about this week's episode?
I don't. Do you?
Not particularly.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 38, Canasta Master.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.